Ryan. Thank you
Yeah,
for the morning. Wow.
yeah, yeah. It went a bit longer. I
No,
sorry. I hope
I
you
haven't
hope I didn't
talked
take
this
up your
much,
time.
this early in a while. So,
Yeah, awesome. Welcome to Tech Times. My name is Ryan Epps. I'm here with Rose Reid of Exile and Shoot the Messenger podcast. You're the host and producer, right? And I believe you're the head of US Audio at Exile too.
yeah.
Awesome.
So I am the head of US Audio at Exile. So that means that I oversee our podcast in English and the podcast that we distribute in the United States.
That's
Exile is a
awesome.
multimedia company. So we have film, documentary, TV, music. So that's my job, is to oversee our English language podcasts. And we also have Spanish language and LATAM podcasts based in Mexico City.
How many podcasts are there, like in total?
That's funny. I feel like that number changes
Oh, for
day to
sure. I bet.
day.
Yeah.
But we have a slate of shows that we've put out with iHeart, and we have
Okay.
this new show, Shoot the Messenger, distributed by PRX in the US. It's like our flagship
Yeah.
investigative reporting show. Yeah.
Awesome. And then, okay, so you work with different platforms, so it's not just one platform that you work with. You said iHeartRadio. Like, do you work with Apple at all, or other platforms for like exclusives,
Mhm.
I guess?
Well, we started our podcast department with a deal with iHeart, and we have 5 shows with them, and we are still branching out and doing second seasons of shows with them and new shows with iHeart. So that's really exciting. But we're also branching out into other platforms. So we're going to be selling to all the major platforms and distributors in the next
Awesome.
upcoming years. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
hmm
And can you talk to me a bit about Shoot the Messenger? How's it going and what's it about?
Shoot the Messenger is kind of a whirlwind in a way. um, in a way, it's really how I came to Exile, because I met Nando Vila, who's our head of studio, and he just said, I have a kind of a small project. Would you, be able to work on it? I was For the last 5 years before, I was running my own company, and I was doing kind of a variety of production and hosting and EPing. And so when I started this project with Nando, it was a collaboration with the Committee to Protect Journalists. And we started
I
out with
love that.
like this, yeah, it's a wonderful organization. The Committee to Protect Journalists, they're basically a watchdog for like any journalist anywhere in the world. If they need anything, if they're in trouble, like when the journalists were getting out of Afghanistan, when there are journalists who are kidnapped, like the
Oh,
CPJ,
wow.
the Committee to Protect Journalists, they're right there. So they do they do a lot of interesting work, and they also do an annual report on, I'm paraphrasing, but it's kind of like a status of reporters and journalists in the world, like who are threatened, kidnapped, jailed, or assassinated. And I know,
Wow.
light stuff. Um, uh, but they, we wanted to do something with them. We wanted to showcase the work that they do. And so I kind of went away for a few weeks to just do some research. And based on that research, the short answer is the biggest threat facing journalists today is cybersecurity. But the
Absolutely.
longer answer is that as our lives are, our physical lives and our digital lives are intersecting more and more, that answer gets a little bit more complicated. So, the way that we approached the show was like using Pegasus spyware, which is a sophisticated military grade spyware, as like an entry point into unraveling, almost like in a Russian doll sense. Like every
Yeah.
episode, we go further and further into this subject matter.
That's awesome. I love that. Oh, can you tell me a bit about the specifically the Pegasus story a little bit? I found that kind of interesting, and it involved Meta engineers, right? And Meta people that worked at Meta and stuff. And
Oh, yeah. So this story goes in a lot of different directions. And I guess I should just kind of pause and say that, um, Shoot the Messenger, kind of overall, is Exile's bi-weekly investigative reporting podcast. So every other week, we're going to have a new episode, and
yep,
every 10 episodes is a new season that focuses on one international news story. So you may have heard the headlines, but this is our deep dive. And for season 1, it's dedicated to Pegasus spyware.
Oh, so the
The
whole season is about that
10
whole story. Oh wow.
episodes all about Pegasus spyware, how it's being used, how it's being misused, how it works, the company that's making it, and this industry that is booming around it. Now, we just dropped our fifth episode this week, and right now we have Shoot the Messenger is like our top, is in the top 50 US documentary podcasts and
Awesome.
top 30 documentary podcasts in
Congratulations. That's
Mexico.
awesome.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. Um, but to your question specifically about Pegasus spyware, Pegasus spyware is a kind of spyware that bypasses any kind of encryption on your phone. So it works like, if you imagine, this is how I like to imagine it. If your phone is like a castle
Yeah.
and it's like built with a bunch of security and you have like even a moat around it and maybe even guards up top. Um, the Pegasus spyware uses different vulnerabilities. It's always like rotating, it's always evolving, but it uses different vulnerabilities in the code of either Android or iPhone to overwhelm your phone just enough that like your castle accidentally lowers its drawbridge, lets the spyware code in, the drawbridge comes up, and like no one knows for the better. That's kind of
Yeah.
how the spyware itself technically works on your phone. And so once it's in your phone, it can use your phone in ways that you can't even use it. Looking at messages, your GPS, turning on your camera, turning on your microphone, wherever you are, going through your data, deleted data, sending that data somewhere. It can use your phone the way that we like maybe like a James Bond tech person would use your
Yeah.
computer. It's pretty
Yeah.
sophisticated.
Oh yeah. That's scary. And the scary part is the fact that you wouldn't even notice, right? You wouldn't even notice that it's happening.
You would
There's no
never,
way to really
yeah,
combat it before it's already happened.
that's right. There's no
Yeah.
way to know unless you get your phone like tested forensically by someone who knows what they're looking for. Also, it does this really clever thing where once Pegasus is on your phone, it prevents system updates from coming up.
Oh
So
wow.
from like deleting itself, and it has
Yeah.
like a self-destruct button. It's very sophisticated.
That's scary. Oh my God. And then so where and how does this involve journalists? I might ask, like, were there specific journalists that have been affected by this?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have so essentially this spyware is made by an Israeli tech company, the NSO Group. And the NSO Group licenses the software kind of like a subscription service to sovereign governments and agencies within those governments. So, some reported countries that are clients include Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Azerbaijan, Bahrain.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
Mexico was an early and an active client. So these countries use this software to and the software was designed and is sold to target and locate terrorists and like kind of the worst criminals, human traffickers, that nature. And there is some, reporting and documentation that is true. We
Yeah.
just don't have a lot of transparency or confirmed cases that they're willing to share,
Of course.
either the countries themselves or the company that's licensing the software. And every sale is approved by the Israeli government. So it's a very
Interesting.
like layered
Yeah.
system. But, you know, the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered in 2018 in a Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, three people close to him have had Pegasus confirmed on their phones.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
So
entire newsrooms. So a newsroom in El Salvador, El Faro, over 30 people have had Pegasus confirmed on their phones. Um, so there are journalists all around the world, from Mexico to the United Arab Emirates, to people who are working in Europe, working in Latin America, who have had this kind of spyware on their phone.
wow. Wow. And I mean, they can take everything essentially from the phone. I mean, all their information, everything, and then delete the phone essentially. Is there any way that the Pegasus program can kind of like not show up essentially? Is there a way that people that you wouldn't even be able to check to see if it's there after the fact?
Oh, you know, okay, so this is a little technical,
No
but
worries.
so to check if there's Pegasus on your phone, there are really only a handful of folks who have really developed the kind of software and like let's say like system check that they know what to look for.
Yeah,
So it's not like they're looking at your phone if you have Pegasus, it's looking at your iPhone or your Android backup to see if there are traces of what they know that Pegasus leaves behind. That's how
interesting.
sophisticated it is. So there
Wow.
is a really good chance that they look at your phone and they don't see it, even if someone has had Pegasus on their phone, that there may not be the proof. So that's
Yeah,
why when we hear about these confirmed cases, it's so important to think, wow, they did so much work to find that confirmed case. and and this is even more in the weeds, but it's harder to find on Androids because the Android malleable, the
yeah,
the software, operating software is a little bit more malleable on Android. So it's harder to find. And also those organizations, like I mentioned, like Citizen Lab, Amnesty International, that have the forensics to look for those traces of Pegasus on your iPhone or Android backup, they've just developed it more for iPhones. So you can
interesting.
see that there's like
Hmm.
this like asterisk next to these confirmed numbers.
Yeah. Well, for me, I mean, personally, I've always had an iPhone. I've never really gone Android, and for
Mm-hmm.
that very reason, because I know Android has problems with privacy, and it's just a little bit of a scary program. I feel like Apple, I feel like is a better, robust system, but clearly not so much. I mean, especially in light of Pegasus, right? I mean, it's kind
Well,
of
I do
scary.
want to say that the that all big tech essentially, like you see it from Microsoft and Google, Dell, Cisco, have all stood in support of the litigation against the NSO group. So I can't speak to that specifically about the
Yeah,
Android versus iPhone, but because I think that both makers are very concerned with security.
of
Um,
course.
one thing that we've seen, and this was like in our fourth episode, was there are engineers who are working at WhatsApp, um, who saw Pegasus in real time. So there was a breach at WhatsApp, and the engineers working there saw it happening in real time. They saw the code moving through the system, targeting specific targets like phone numbers. And and what happened was is that they basically figured it out. They solved that vulnerability. They kicked out whoever was behind the Pegasus breach, and they were able to issue a software update to over 1 billion users around the
That's
world.
crazy. It's scary.
It's scary, but it's also really impressive.
Yeah,
So I think one thing that I've learned on this journey is just as like scary as the other side is, just like how brilliant and like kind of proactive all these other sides are.
yeah.
So after that happened, WhatsApp made an announcement and like shared with the world that Pegasus breached their servers, that they identified. So to your earlier point, maybe there's more, but they identified 1,400 specific targets, and they spent a year
Damn.
reaching out to those people, and they brought a lawsuit against the NSO group. So that lawsuit is still making its way. And that's
Yeah.
what this week's episode, we touched upon that lawsuit and like the impact, that lawsuit could set precedents that could impact everyone with a smartphone.
And this is a lawsuit for who against who, if I may ask.
So WhatsApp and Facebook,
I
this is
see.
before they became Meta.
Okay.
WhatsApp and Facebook filed a lawsuit against the NSO group, the Israeli tech company making this software, for trespassing on their on their property, like
Yeah.
the servers,
Servers. Yeah.
and for benefiting from taking their proprietary information. So they brought like a civil lawsuit against the NSO group. And what we're going to see, that lawsuit has actually climbed its way all the way to the Supreme Court because the NSO group kept appealing. And Yeah,
That.
they were basically, their argument was, we should get foreign sovereign immunity because we're working on behalf of foreign sovereigns.
Yeah,
And the Supreme Court asked the highest, attorney in the country, the Solicitor General of the Biden administration, to weigh in, if they should pick up the case, if there's anything they should take into consideration. And the Solicitor General basically came back and said, that they don't find that they qualify for foreign sovereign immunity. And the
of
Supreme
course.
Court didn't take that case. And so just this past January, the decision has been decided that it will go back down to the lower courts. The
Oh my God.
California federal court will let the WhatsApp lawsuit proceed, and
Okay.
trial is set for December 2024, and discovery is underway. And that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing, is what the discovery kind of reveals.
Yeah, well, it's crazy how long these like litigations take and how, it's just like in circles almost kind of like, right? Like it's just like, especially you said December 2024. I mean, God, that's so much can
Yeah.
happen in that amount of time, I feel like. I mean, and to your point, I mean, it seems that they already know that they're in the wrong, right? I mean, I don't know. They clearly keep trying to push back the date and stuff and trying their best to get out of it, it seems. And that's scary.
Well,
And
their business model is based on secrecy.
yeah,
And a big part of their relationship that they've built with all of their clients is protecting that and anonymity and protecting their information. So discovery is a very scary thing, I think, for a business that is shrouded in secrecy.
for sure. For sure. And as so you said you're on the fifth episode. When does the next episode come out?
So our episode just came out this week. That's all about the WhatsApp case and
You spoke with
what
WhatsApp developers and had
we
people on.
yeah, what that for our fourth episode, we spoke with engineers who were working at WhatsApp at the time. And for this latest episode, the fifth episode, that's all about the lawsuit, we spoke with attorneys who worked very closely making the amicus brief, which is like a brief in support of a lawsuit.
Yeah,
So Access Now, Amnesty International, Reporters Without Borders, and together with the Committee to Protect Journalists, wrote an amicus brief in support of the WhatsApp lawsuit for the court to consider, kind of specific victims' cases, which wasn't really a part of the kind of narrow focus of WhatsApp's lawsuit. So we spoke with attorneys who were basically able to just break it down. It's like, okay, like just
go
tell
through the
me the
speak, right?
101, like
The
walk me
lawyer speak.
through. Yeah,
Yeah.
walk me through what this is about and how this impacts us and how this could impact individuals and how this has impacted people who had this spyware on their phone, or who were told they had spyware on their phone. So that's what this episode was about. And then I think what's really exciting for us is, our first few episodes kind of take you along this journey.
Yeah.
So we start our first episode with the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and I had the opportunity to interview his widow, who had Pegasus confirmed on her phone 3 years after his murder. 3 years.
Wow. That's scary.
That means that for the last 5 months of Jamal Khashoggi's life, everything that they communicated about, every decision, every conversation, was betrayed, was compromised.
Yeah.
And I think that the pain of that lives for a long time. And I also think that it just really helps us understand that, the systematic approach in which someone was targeted and also like viewed as a threat. Jamal Khashoggi, his columns for the Washington Post are pretty moderate, and he was really considered himself, a proud Saudi, and really believed in his government and the possibility for them to do some pretty moderate reforms. And the brutality with which, the brazenness of which he was, a journalist who was murdered, who worked for an American newspaper on foreign soil. It's just a real pivotal moment, I think for all of us who are alive at this time. And that's our first episode is interviewing his widow, the reporter
Wow.
Dana Priest for the Washington Post, found who made this discovery and made this connection between Jamal's widow and Pegasus, with together with other, folks from Amnesty International and Citizen Lab. And our second up, we kind of start there, and then every episode we kind of pull back the thread, unspooling the story a little bit more. So in the second episode, going into like how this spyware works and how do we know so much about it. And the third episode, the origin story of the company that makes this. And then you can
Um,
see we just kind of like leapfrog from there.
that's awesome. Are there thus far, I know you're only halfway, right? You're only halfway through, but thus far, have
Mhm.
you learned any lessons from just this whole debacle? I mean, you were talking about the wife, and I can imagine the paranoia now that she has just, hanging over her. She could get hacked at any moment. Pegasus could still be on her phone, for all she knows.
Well,
Um,
she does have a new phone, and I will say I've learned a lot. I mean, before I started this show, I was the kind of person that like didn't do any software updates. I was like, whatever, like can't be bothered. Why can't they figure it out the first time?
yeah,
I
yeah,
had no
yeah.
idea. I had no idea what a software update really was. I didn't really understand that there's like kind of this ongoing, I didn't realize that code was evolving,
Oh,
that
yeah.
that code really reflects the humanity that we have every day, like the we don't get every day perfect. We don't get every task perfect. And code is evolving just like we are evolving. I didn't know that. And the fact that, when you get a software update, it's usually because, hey, we found a hole, a vulnerability, and we're going to
Yep.
patch it. We're going to make it better for you. I didn't understand that. So now I definitely do all my software updates. And I think rather than sinking into the paranoia or the fear of it all, I think I'm looking at the opportunity and kind of the incredible work that I've seen that this Committee to Protect Journalists has done, that a coalition of journalists around the world, spearheaded by Forbidden Stories, a France-based organization. The kind of incredible collaboration that has been done to find out answers and to look harder at this has been really amazing. Really what one of the big things that I'm doing is connecting all of this amazing reporting
Yeah.
and featuring it in one place. So the reporting that's been done by Ronan Farrell at the New Yorker, by Dana Priest at the Washington Post, Nicole Perlroth at the New York Times, and Citizen Lab, the kind of work that they're doing, I think that that makes me more positive and like hopeful than the work, or than focusing on, let's say, the people behind this spyware.
I like that. I like that. But still, I mean, you talking about it, you discussing it almost every, what, bi-weekly, right? Do you ever have concerns that maybe you might get targeted?
Oh yeah, I think about it all the time. And like I
Yeah.
definitely like leave my phone like in a kitchen, and like I mean I just not I feel like I could take more steps, but I think that, you know, I've been thinking about this more philosophically, that we are so connected to our digital pieces, and we take
Yeah, too
this
much.
thing with us everywhere. I mean, I'm not really ever far from this, and I think that that's more important maybe than for the paranoia, is for like our just kind of physical health of, it's good to separate. It's good to separate from this thing,
For sure.
to put this in another room, to go a day, or and I kind of have scheduled time away from my phone, and I think that that's like something I look forward to. But I think
Awesome.
that that maybe has really changed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, I still read books and people think I'm crazy. So
Oh, you're a
I don't
Renaissance man. Good for
exactly.
you.
But
Keep those bookstores alive.
exactly, exactly. But I was gonna say, so you have incredible insight, it seems so far. Are there any lessons you would give to, I guess, journalists that are maybe covering it, or even just covering other stuff? I mean, are there any ways that you would see journalists getting around potential spyware, potential hacks, whatever it be?
Well, I do want to say that although we have confirmed cases of journalists being targeted, we don't have a lot of evidence that points to the fact that they are, let's say, disproportionately targeted by
Mhm.
sovereign governments. So I just want to kind of qualify that,
Yeah.
that, where a lot of people aren't able to know the lists of confirmed terrorists or know their phone numbers. And so when there is all this data, there is no way to know, let's say, the ratio of like journalists and dissidents compared to what would be, thought of as a legitimate target
Of
if there
course.
is one. Um, so I just want to caveat that. The other thing that I would say is that very tactically, there are things that journalists can do and it makes the work a lot harder to protect themselves, whether that's leaving their phone at home, meeting a source in person without their phone,
Yeah.
collecting information without using like
Any electronic.
email or
Yeah.
recording or Google Docs. That's hard. On the other hand, there are amazing organizations, like I mentioned, Amnesty International, Access Now, and Citizen Lab, that if journalists are legitimately concerned, they can get their phones forensically checked.
Wow.
So I would say that those are like two like pretty big tactical things that journalists and other people who might be concerned about. But other ways to stay safe is really to find other ways to connect with your source or develop a relationship with your source. But as you can see, that might be really hard if you live in a different city or even different neighborhood as your source.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, do you get routine checks on your phone?
That's very funny that you asked that. My company is helping me set that up. Yeah.
No way. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope it's good. I hope everything's fine. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
just
I'm sure it's
interesting. I mean,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm that we are showcasing stories of folks who are doing the reporting. I feel like I'm amplifying that reporting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would necessarily, I feel like I'm like a measly target.
I wouldn't say that. But one thing I will say, I mean, I interviewed a cybersecurity specialist maybe I don't know a month ago, and one thing he did bring up, he said, hacks are going to happen. You know, it's not
Mm.
about getting around it. It's going to happen, and it's just being prepared for that moment, being ready to step on. And as you said, with the WhatsApp people, how they were instantly ready, they kind of already had a plan in place, and they set in motion immediately. It's one thing that he brought up that kind of stuck with me, this fact that there's no getting around it. You know, it's going to happen, and you just have to be ready for it and hop on it immediately. And I found that kind of interesting how yeah, it's inevitable almost.
Yeah, I think that's a interesting way to look at it. Although I would maybe counter and say that this is a really great opportunity and time for us to reevaluate our social digital contract, if you will.
Yeah,
I think that, that attitude, like you're going to be hacked, I think that makes sense kind of like in a military standpoint. Like, like if you're the American military and you're another military for another country, like, sure, you're going to be hacked, but do we as citizens are we not entitled to live our life with some privacy and like a
absolutely.
right to that privacy? So that's kind of I would counter your cyber expert.
Well, I will say he meant for companies specifically. I feel like that's one, I
Yeah.
guess, outlier
Okay.
is
I'm with
he
him
was
on that.
specifically
Yeah, you're
talking
gonna
about
yeah.
companies, but I mean it's still, even then, it I see my passwords get leaked sometimes, and it's like, it's bound to happen. You got to change your password every now and then, and yeah, but to your point, absolutely, privacy is absolutely important. It's in this day and age, it's gone out the window, and it seems like no one really cares. Kind of, it's like people are
You
readily
think so?
accepting it. Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
people care.
Most,
I
maybe not
do.
everyone, but oh
I th
really?
Yeah, I think people really do care. You know what I think it is? I think that once people really understand what's at stake, even if their own phone, of their own contacts, I think that that privacy conversation changes a lot. And I think that the privacy conversation maybe hasn't happened with like the full menu, if you will, of what's on the table. So when you talk to someone like, okay, maybe you have just dog photos and you just go to the same few places every day. But maybe you wouldn't want someone using you to get to your mom.
Yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't want someone using your cousin to get to you. Maybe you wouldn't, maybe someone you are close with, does kind of sensitive work that could, or is a doctor and has confidential information on their work phone. So I think that when we have this conversation, like a little bit more rooted in the reality of the dynamism of our relationships, people are a little bit different when we talk about, like, I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
It's not that you have anything to hide, it's that you have a right to your mind, and the phone is such an extension of our mind and our day and our life, much more than, let's say, a landline was 20 years ago, or even someone bugging, like a invading your home and bugging your lamp. Your phone is so much more than what could be tapped before.
Awesome. That is beautifully said.
I've been thinking about this a lot, man.
Clearly. Uh so you're talking about Pegasus right now. What's next? I mean, what's the next 10 episode series, if I may ask? I don't know.
Absolutely. So we're halfway through our season on Truth the Messenger, the season about Pegasus spyware, and the next few episodes are going to be looking much deeper at kind of this web of how we're kind of connected to like one of the things that we're looking at is how the NSO group has, like, its financial web and, like, the global economy, like, and how it's connected. And I'm really interested to go, like, a little bit further there. There's been some amazing reporting by the Financial Times, and we get to speak to them. And we'll also speak to the people behind the Pegasus Project that brought a coalition of journalists around the world together on this subject. And we'll be speaking to Carlos Dada, who is from El Faro in El Salvador, and had Pegasus confirmed on his phone. And so we're going to be doing the rest of the season is like a roller coaster. So I would definitely stay tuned for that. And our second season is all about the assassination of the president in Haiti. So we go into a totally different topic and really try to find out what happened there.
That's awesome. Well, what about so you mostly audio, right? Obviously, right? Would you ever do video at all?
What? I'm head of audio. I'm not looking for a new job.
It's just-
No, it's so funny. No, I mean, people make fun of me. I know I'm like one of 11 people that is, like, not interested in moving on to video. I
No,
feel
but
like I'm still, like, getting better at my craft.
yeah,
I'm really interested in, like, kind of getting better at what I do. And I think that there's, like, a lot of room for growth here. So I'm
I like
I'm
that.
I'm staying put. Yeah, I'm staying put in this medium. Audio is my medium.
Have you ever been
Um,
pushed? Have you ever been pushed to do video at all, or no?
no.
Okay, I'm
I
curious.
mean,
It's
maybe. Um, it depends. No, I don't. I mean, I've worked, like, adjacent to video. Like, I've worked, like, in a company that did lots of video, and we have just such amazing people who do video on my side.
yeah. Well, I love what you're doing. I now I need to tap in. I need to listen. Where can I find the podcast?
So Shoot the Messenger is everywhere where you listen to podcasts. It's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, it's on Overcast, Google
Awesome,
Podcasts. Yeah, wherever you listen.
awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we go?
I just wanted to say that we're doing some really neat things at Exile, and this project was started because of the relationships that our founder and CEO Isaac Lee has. He started his career as a journalist in Colombia, reporting on corruption, and now he's leading Exile. And so we're doing a lot of different things. And so with it was through him that I met the Committee to Protect Journalists and learned about so much of what they're doing. And this show has been quite a journey. And it's just one part of what the company is doing with whether it's doing investigative journalism on the audio side or making documentaries. or even, we're developing IP and we're developing franchises around it. So I would say that the Shoot the Messenger on PRX, like distributed by PRX, this is something we're super excited about, but it's one thing that we're really excited about for the whole year.
Awesome. Yeah. It's not just Shoot the Messenger. Exile has a ton of awesome shows as well. That's awesome.
Yeah, we have podcasts, we have film, documentaries, music. We're full 360 studio, and we're based in all over the world, but mostly in Los Angeles and Mexico City.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, Rose. Well, have a nice day. All
Lovely.
right. Take care.
Okay, thank you.